On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Board of Health meeting for September 3rd, 2019. Councillor Hoffman just sent me a note this afternoon that she is unable to attend this evening. For everyone else, I would like to remind them that our meetings are web streamed and televised, and for those in attendance, I would ask that you ensure your phones are on silent mode. Thank you to Bill Jackson in the back, as always, for volunteering to run the camera for council camera meetings. And again, if there's anyone out there that would like to give Mr. Jackson a break from time to time, we'd love to hear from you. I would also like to introduce everyone here today and that's watching online. Chris McQueen, who's our new Chief Administrative Officer. He brings 20 years of municipal experience coupled with a Master's of Business Administration and a nursing degree. His career experience includes a blend of elected municipal council experience and senior municipal leadership experience across a variety of departments. So welcome, Chris. And I would also like to introduce Paula Boutis, our county solicitor. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Okay. Paula was called to the bar in 2001 and also brings 20 years of experience in the legal field, including most recently for the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, formerly known as the OMB. So on behalf of Norfolk County Council, welcome to both of you, and we're excited to have you join us. First of all, as always, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, I have a motion moved by Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Councillor Geisens, that the agenda be approved as presented. All in favor? And that's carried. And moving on, are there any errors or omissions related to the Board of Health meeting minutes? Okay, if not, the Board of Health minutes for June 18, 2019, having been circulated, no errors or omissions reported, be declared as adopted and signed by the chair and county clerk and affixed with the corporate seal. First presentation we have is staff report HSS 19-40, and that's in regards to food affordability in Haldimand and Norfolk for 2018. So if Marlene, is that you presenting?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we may adjust the agenda slightly and have the Medical Officer of Health report first and then go into the presentation, that would be appreciated.
Sounds great. Oh, there he's hiding behind you. I didn't even see him. Absolutely.
Madam Chair, members of the Board of Health, public health is focused on the health of communities, and it's different than practice of medicine, which is focused on the health of individuals. Today, my colleagues are going to present a very important report on food insecurity. Food insecurity is more than just people feeling hungry. It's actually a broader construct, and it includes a number of items that we can do to try to improve people's sense of security with food. In preparing this report today, I had a chance to read a little bit more about Norfolk and Haldimand County. In Norfolk County, the garden of a major agricultural district, is almost every conceivable food item seems to be made, and that's true in Haldimand County as well. And I was just going through the list talking asparagus, corn, beets, cauliflower, chickens, hogs, dairy, cattle, cheese. And Food products are probably worth $419 million. That's the estimate for Norfolk County. And yet, 11% of the people in this health district experience food insecurity. It's striking that an agricultural district has so many people who self-report that they have insecurity with food. When we think of food insecurity, Professor Udell conceptualized this with the 5 A's, and if I could share that with you. First is the obvious, availability. There's sufficient food for all people at all times. Accessibility, the physical and economic access to food. And when we think of economic access, that is money and financial support, but it's also an ability to get to the grocery store, the farmer's bank, a farmer's market, or to a food bank. Adequacy, access to food that's nutritious and safe and that's produced in an environmentally sustainable way. Acceptability, the whole idea that we should have food that people want to eat and it's consistent with their cultural and or religious beliefs. And agency, and this has a big public policy component, the policies and processes that enable the achievement of food security. So things that we can think of is that, how can we zone our communities so that the grocery stores can be built, or how can we build infrastructure or transportation so people can actually make it to the grocery store or to a farmer's market. I want today's discussion to be more than just about income support for individuals who don't have access to food. That's clearly an important public policy goal, but it's also about the variety of options that we might have to improve food security for all people. I want to close with something that's provocative, but I think it's worth thinking about. Willett is a public health expert, and he and his colleagues are quoted saying, "Unhealthy diets pose a greater risk to morbidity and mortality than unsafe sex, alcohol, and drug and tobacco use combined." Now, we could argue with the magnitude of the impact, but I think his conclusion that food is the single strongest lever to optimize human health is so true. So with that, thank you for allowing my colleagues and I to present today on this very important issue.
Thank you, Dr. Shanker. Any questions from councilors? Councilor Columbus.
Madam Chair, I don't have a question, but I'd just like to make a comment here, if I could. There's a statement on page 2 of 6 of the report. The 2018 kindergarten parent survey polled 234 parents in Holloman and Norfolk with children in junior and senior kindergarten. This survey showed 18.8% of families experienced food insecurity in the last year, and only 7.7% of families surveyed have access to community food services. Just want to say that this council some time ago provided the Inwell project with $250,000 backup money. That was $7,800 per year, or $650 per month, to satisfy the needs of 32 persons. And this food shortage here, a lot of that money, kids are going to school with skimpy lunches. We're reading it right here. There's skimpy lunches. That money would have been better off to go to something like this rather than to that particular project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Columbus. I guess on that note, so when we look at, we're spending money still on a smoking cessation program, on children's falls, and all these things, and if you're saying this is the greater challenge, how do we move funds away from those programs and staff resources and redirect those resources and our staff into focusing on areas like this, where in an agricultural area, like you said, there probably are seconds and so on, things that we could be doing, unique programs with our farmers if we had our staff re-engaged on more critical issues than, to me, if you haven't learned just not smoke at this point in time, you're probably not going to learn it.
So I think that's a very fair point, Madam Chop and members of Board of Health. We do have to set priorities in health. And I think it's reasonable for us to articulate at the Board of Health level that perhaps programs that we previously spent lots of resources on should be spent on new programs or new priorities. Also, as a generic construct in public health, not only do we define the problems, but also try to measure the effect of our interventions. And so I think it's a healthy dialogue to reevaluate what programs and services we choose. I think that as we move forward, and I hope that we can have this discussion about what we think are the priorities in public health and what items perhaps we can stop spending money on or spend less, and what programs we can perhaps spend more money on. So that would be a generic comment, and we'd be happy to have that dialogue with the members of the Board of Health.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions from councillors? Well, I hope that we do get to have that dialogue, I guess, and at some point in the near future to see what options we have to be able to walk away from some of those programs and start to think of some new and innovative programs in Norfolk and set ourselves apart from some of the other regions that are just doing things the same old way. Okay, so with that, I have a motion moved by Councillor Michelli and seconded by Councillor Van Passen that the update from Dr. Nessathari, Medical Officer of Health, be received as information. All those in favor? And that's carried. I guess we're going to turn over to the next presentation then, the PowerPoint. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to introduce to the board Emily Kitchler. She is one of our public health dietitians, and she's going to be presenting the report this afternoon to the board.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily, and as was mentioned, I'm a registered dietitian at the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit. And today I'm here to present the results from the 2018 Nutritious Food Basket Survey and to discuss food affordability in Haldeman and Norfolk. So to start off, food insecurity is defined as inadequate or insecure access to food due to financial constraints. It affects 11% or 1 in 9 households in Haldeman and Norfolk, and this is according to the 2013 to 14 Canadian Community Health Survey data. And this is the most recent data we have on rates of food insecurity. So having a low income leads many individuals to become food insecure, which results in them worrying about running out of food, relying on lower cost, potentially less nutritious foods, and skipping meals entirely because they don't have enough money. So research shows that food insecurity is linked to higher rates of chronic disease, such as heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, depression, and anxiety. And in children, we see higher rates of asthma, depression, and poorer academic performance. So consequently, individuals who are food insecure are higher cost users of healthcare, which highlights the importance of this serious public health concern. So, since 1998, boards of health across Ontario have been mandated by the Ontario Public Health Standards to monitor food affordability. The health unit uses the Nutritious Food Basket, or NFB tool, which is a standardized provincial survey tool that's used to calculate the average cost to eat healthy in a particular region. So, in May of 2018, the average monthly cost to feed a family of 4 in Haldeman and Norfolk was $857.17. This represents $47 more per month, or a 5.8% increase in food costs compared to 5 years earlier. Also, our preliminary 2019 NFB data shows an increase to food prices of an additional $55 per month, or 6.4% over 2018 prices, and we're seeing the greatest increases to vegetables and fruit. However, it's really important to note that the rising cost of food is not the main issue here. Rather, it's the inadequacy of income, which is the most significant predictor of food insecurity, that is the real concern. So we know that results from this survey are consistent from year to year, and they demonstrate that after paying for basic needs, including rent and food, people on low incomes have little, if any, money left to cover other necessary costs of living. So results from the Nutritious Food Basket costing data must be used in context, and we use them together with the average rental rates in our region. The data can then be compared in a variety of typical income and family scenarios, all of which are provided to us by the ministry. So for example, you'll see that a family of 4 earning the median Ontario income after paying for rent and food would have over $6,000 left in their budget. We can compare this to a family with a minimum wage earner, which would have $1,867 left. A family on Ontario Works has just $846. This comparison continues for the other family types and income scenarios, which include a single parent with 2 children on Ontario Works, a single woman on the Old Age Security Benefit, a single male on the Ontario Disability Support Program, and a single male on Ontario Works. And you'll note that in this last scenario, this man would go $63 into debt each month after paying for food and rent alone. Any money left over, if any, must cover all the other basic necessities of living, such as transportation, telephone, personal care items, hydro, childcare, heat, medical and dental care, and clothing. And fixed expenses, such as utility bills, often have to take priority, so nutrition, and therefore health, is compromised as groceries are considered a flexible expense. So in 2013, Health Unit staff completed the Haldeman Norfolk Food Mapping Project. And as part of this project, they examined one component of community food security, and that is physical access to food. Lack of physical access to affordable, nutritious food is linked to a nutritionally inadequate diet. And physical access to healthy food is a particular concern for low-income individuals and families in rural areas like ours, because they often lack access to adequate transportation that's needed to travel to the various food access points. Health Unit staff mapped supermarkets, farmers markets, food banks, drop-in meal programs, student nutrition programs, convenience stores, community kitchens, community gardens, and community-supported agriculture, as well as the public transit routes. And the maps also show population density and regions where there's a higher percentage of families living on low incomes, because this can help us interpret what interventions might have the greatest impact on vulnerable populations. So this particular map shows Haldimand, and you'll note that there are grocery stores in Hagersville, Caledonia, Cayuga, and Dunnville, but many of the smaller communities like Jarvis may have inadequate access to food service outlets. And you'll also note that there is no public transportation route in Haldimand. So this next map illustrates geographically the food the food access points in Norfolk County. So Simcoe, Port Dover, Port Rowan, Delhi, and Waterford all have supermarkets. And you can kind of make out the green line, which is showing the Ride Norfolk transportation route. And it passes through all the towns assessed, and it stops at a supermarket in every town. The darker orange regions show areas where 25 to 35% of the population lives on a low income. We also have more detailed maps of each individual community. So for example, this one is of Simcoe. And these can help us more comprehensively assess the needs of each community as they pertain to food accessibility, and can help identify potential interventions to help improve food security. So while this food mapping project was completed in the past, we continue to update our GIS maps regularly. So moving forward, Health Unit staff will continue to monitor food affordability using the NFB assessment tool each year, and will continue to share the findings as well as any opportunities for advocacy with the Board of Health. Health Unit staff will also continue to participate as members of the Poverty Action Partnership of Haldimand and Norfolk. And we will continue to work with food banks by providing them with information brochures for clients as well as donation guides. So while food charity, such as food banks, soup kitchens, and meal programs, provide an emergency supply of food to some individuals during times of critical need, we know that they're not the ultimate solution. And research estimates that, in fact, only about 25% of food insecure individuals actually access these emergency food programs. The root cause of food insecurity is poverty, so therefore, income-based solutions are also needed. We need more upstream strategies to address the social determinants of health and reduce these health inequities. Health unit staff will also continue to update our GIS maps, and we're also working on developing a comprehensive healthy eating strategy for the Haldeman Norfolk Health Unit. So boards of health can use this food costing data to inform the development of healthy public policy and programs, to push for education and training opportunities to increase employment and income, and implement policies and zoning bylaws designed to promote the establishment of grocery stores and other outlets that provide affordable access to healthy food, and particularly in areas of low availability. So in conclusion, food insecurity is a significant social and public health concern as it leads to serious consequences such as higher rates of chronic disease. The Nutritious Food Basket Report is a powerful advocacy tool, and it can be used by the Board of Health. Results from this survey provide concrete evidence that incomes from social assistance and minimum wage are inadequate to ensure food security for many people in our communities. So I thank you for your time. We ask that you receive this report as information only, and now we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Questions from councilors? Board Member Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I have a request. Could you circulate what the nutritious food basket consists of?
Sure.
I want to make sure I'm eating healthy too. But I do have a question. You know, on the graph there, a single male Ontario Works is going backwards by $60 a month. But a family of 4 can be sustained by a minimum wage earner and have $850 left over. And we also have 1,200 jobs available in Norfolk County. So what are resources trying to get people off of Ontario Works and into the job market at minimum wage would solve this problem? So do we have programs to try to get people out of the one system and into the other one?
If I may, I'll take that question. Through the chair, we continuously look at different programs in the Ontario Works program to remove those barriers, to get them off of the financial support system. So we continue to do that, and we continue to work with the Board of Health staff as well to move those things forward.
Okay, any further questions from board members? That's a great question, actually. Thank you very much for your presentation. With that, then, I have a motion moved by Councillor Van Passen, seconded by Councillor Martin, that staff report HSS 19-40, Food Insecurity in Haldeman and Norfolk 2018 be received as information. The staff report HSS 19-40 be forwarded to the Ontario Boards of Health. All those in favor? And that's carried. Next is the staff report concerning the Ministry of Health long-term care for 2019 operational funding for the Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Syed Shah will present the report on the new dental program for the low-income seniors.
Thank you through the chair to the members of Board of Health. I'm going to present the new dental care program for low-income seniors. As you may be aware, during Provincial Budget 2019, the government announced funding for Ontario Senior Dental Care Program. The objective of this program, there are 4 main objectives of this program. The first one is to access to dental care services. The second one is to reduce infections. The third one is to prevent chronic diseases. And the fourth one is to decrease the burden on healthcare system. On June 2019, we received a notification from Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care for operational funding of $537,000 for this program. This amount is an annual amount, and it will be prorated for 2019. We recommend that this funding will be used to create and fill 3 full-time positions, that is a dentist and a program assistant, 0.5 each, and a dental assistant and a dental hygienist, 1 FTE each. The program model, there are 3 important components of this program. The first one is eligibility. Like, the clients would be eligible for this program if they are residents of Ontario, they must be 65 years of age or older, and they meet the minimum income threshold, that is $19,300 or less for a single, or a $32,300 or less for a couple. And they don't have any access to any other dental insurance benefits like Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Program. The second important component of this program is how will a low-income senior will access this program. So once the program is launched, senior will be able to get an application form from the ministry's website or from a public health unit. And after the application form, there would be a centralized assessment process at the ministry level. After assessment, the eligible clients, they will be enrolled and they will be provided a dental card. The third important component of this program is what would be the schedule of services or the scope of services. So this program will include all the preventive services, restorative services, and the diagnostic services. As per ministry's direction, the implementation of this program would be in 2 stages. During stage 1, the date for stage 1 has been revised to fall of this year, where dental care would be provided to eligible low-income seniors based on increasing operational funding and leveraging the existing infrastructure. And during stage 2, the program would be expanded by investing in new dental care services. In our geographical district and in our health unit, we don't have the necessary infrastructure to provide this scope of services. For that, we have submitted a capital funding proposal for Ministry of Health to enhance our dental infrastructure. So we'll be writing or presenting a report to Board of Health once we get more information from Ministry of Health. With this, I would recommend and suggest that all the recommendations at the end of this report would be accepted, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you may have.
Okay, thank you, sir. Board Member Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Chop. It's been a while.
Okay, yeah.
Through you too, Mr. Syed. First, has the local dental community been consulted about how this is going to be implemented yet?
Yeah, we did have a consultation with the local dental health association. Me and Dr. Nessa Turi, we went to see the president of the local dental health association, and we are in consultation with them.
They have some suggestions as to how implementation would look or anything like that, or is it still early?
Yeah, it's still early, but we did get some very inputs from them, and we are working on it.
And when this comes into effect, there's going to be a massive increase in demand for dentists in Ontario. Is that supply out there? How are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, that was one of the concerns that was highlighted during our meeting. But we are working with the Brant County so that we can have a full-time dentist that we can share with the Brant County. Yeah.
Marlene, did you have something to add there as well?
So, through the chair, I think that it'd be fair to say that that more consultation with the dental community would have been preferred from our vantage point prior to the introduction of this program and the execution of the program. And we hope that we met with Dr. Mello, who was the past president of the Norfolk County Dental Association, or the Dental Leadership Group, and we would hope to benefit from local dentists and on the implementation. One thing I think Mr. Syed and we are concerned about is how the service delivery model will be effectuated. because the ministry has directed us to have a hired employee dentist. Dr. Mello, and I don't think he'd object to me saying this, it's a challenge to recruit dentists to geographic areas such as Haldeman and Norfolk. And then the second issue, among other issues, would be how would we access specialist dental services and denturists to provide the spectrum of services by this mandate. I think the one thing we can share is that we're going to continue to investigate this and try to resolve these issues so we can execute on the very best program possible.
One more question here, and through you to Dr. Nesatheri. Actually, I spoke to you about this after the Board of Health meeting. How are we going to handle emergency situations when inevitably someone comes to a county building with a dental emergency that could result in a bloodborne disease or anything like that? How do we handle that situation, or how do we prevent people from coming to Norfolk County buildings and direct them to the hospitals?
Yeah, so we still have to work out a number of items to operationalize what the ministry wants what the service delivery model would be. As I understand it, and Mr. Shaw can correct me, is that we're mandated to deal with dental emergencies. My sense is those emergencies will come through two sources. One, they'll go to the emergency department and they'll get emergent treatment and then have to come to a dental center. And the second would be people phoning in for dental emergencies. And we will need to have some mechanism to deal with that. That's particularly compounded because we will have funding only for a part-time dentist. So the days that the dentist is not in the office, that would be one additional challenge. So clearly those are concerns that I think are entirely valid, and we're going to have to provide some service delivery model to address that issue.
Right, thank you.
Board Member Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions here. Is there any estimate of the number of senior users that would be utilizing this service?
Yeah, currently there would be thousands low-income seniors in our geographical district. Actually, there are, and that is an assumption of 40% utilization rate. In total, we may have around 2,500 low-income seniors in both Haldeman and Norfolk, and Ministry is taking a formula for 40% utilization rate. So that comes out to be 1,000 low-income seniors that would be benefiting from this program.
Okay. And we're spread across 2 counties. Can you tell us the locations? Where would they be operating out of? Like, where would someone go for this service? Would it be, I don't believe we have a dental office at the health department, do we? Well,
we do have.
We do?
Because we are working with our Healthy Smiles Ontario program. So what we are proposing in our capital funding project, so the one location would be in Simcoe, the other one would be in Dunville, and then there would be a preventive services in Langton, and we have also asked for a mobile dental bus that would be helping for the outreach.
Okay, thank you very much.
Did you have something else you want to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add that we've actually submitted a substantive number of capital requests to the grant through a grant program to help with the capital for those locations that Mr. Shaw has just spoken of.
Okay, so we're talking 3 or 4 locations plus a bus, and that's all going to be funded from $500,000 plus some additional cap?
Through the mayor to the board, no, that amount in the report is operational only. Those other requests were separate grants that we've put in for those 4 requests. Once we hear back from the ministry, then we'll respond accordingly.
Okay, so even though if that's operational, I'm just wondering with that many locations, like the way that I see here, we have a half a dentist is going to be spread between 3-4 locations plus a mobile bus and one FTE hygienist and one FTE assistant. Like, is there any requirement? Have these positions been filled yet? Have we hired for these?
So through you, Madam Mayor, no, these have not been filled. This is a report bringing the request forward to the board for approval. We'll need to work with HR and move these positions forward. You're absolutely right. What you're saying is some of the significant complications and challenges we're bringing forward to the ministry. The funding and the the varied locations is very problematic, including the emergency response requirement and the different levels of services that'll be required. There is definitely challenges that we're working through, and that being one of them, of having, limited staff to provide services basically 24/7, or availability of access 24/7 with very limited staff. These are the funds that we have currently and what we need to work through.
So with a government, is there any sort of restriction on what I'm about to say? But I mean, with a government that's demonstrated a keen interest to have private partnerships and so on in various services, what would be the restriction? I always think back to Councillor Haight with the yoga of, providing some sort of support with the dentists that we already have in town and hygienists, and as opposed to us hiring and taking on dental work of, funding these people's services at one of the establishments that's already in Haldimand or Norfolk.
Yeah, there is a restriction from the ministry, like all the partnership with all the stakeholders would be on a salaried basis. So that's a restriction.
Okay, and so when does this have to be implemented by? If
It's because as I mentioned, there would be implementation would be in 2 stages. In stage 1, so the ministry is looking at early fall, but that depends on the required infrastructure. But currently we don't have the required infrastructure for providing services to these low-income seniors, because we do have an infrastructure for our Healthy Smiles Ontario, in which we are dealing with the children only. So we are in discussion with ministry to provide us some funding, and this is what Marlene was referring for, capital funding, so that we can start our program.
So before we hire for these positions, would there be any benefit if it was the desire of the board, if it was also your recommendation for these services to have a number of private operators be qualified to be able to provide these services and receive the funding? Would there not be some sort of merit to perhaps as a resolution of the Board of Health to be able to advance this to the ministry? So if that was the case, could we advance such a resolution today and defer approving this until the next Board of Health meeting, or does that put you under a time constraint?
Compromise our ability potentially, Sorry about that. I think we compromise our ability to deliver on the requirements from the ministry, but we could always halt the process. The reality of it is we can't hire these people until we hear related to our capital grants and what they may look like, and that'll guide our service delivery model, which will then guide how our recruitment process as well. So this is really getting board approval to move things along, but continue to respect the wish of the board.
Okay, so if one of the board members advanced such a resolution, we would wait to hear back something before we actually went and made offers, even if we approve this other.
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely, we can do that.
I just have one final question, then I see a couple of other hands. So I guess one of the other challenges just that I see with this is, I see a huge demand for the service when it comes out. And so like many of the programs, I just had an opportunity the other day to look at the org chart within the health department. And, of course, we've just laid off or terminated 8 speech pathologists, and I know that there was a program assistant overseeing those speech pathologists. And so I'm just wondering, in this case, why we need a program assistant for 3 employees, if it would not be, if there's not somebody already within the health unit that would be able to oversee that component, or if that money was it just going to be used to fund somebody that's existing? Because the way that I read this is that this is going to be a new position that's going to be hired for.
So through you, Madam Chair, I just want to clarify that there was 5.8 FTEs and there was 3 speech language pathologists were affected, just for clarity purposes.
Okay, but seven were.
7 in total for that program, and yes, one of them was a program assistant. And so the funding for that has been terminated or will be terminated at the end of this month. Those positions, as a PA, that person could apply or could bump into these positions if they were approved and moving forward. Absolutely, we would look at internal bumping of those positions if the person was qualified to move into those positions.
To me, I see more value in having 1.5 dental hygienists as opposed to an additional program assistant, I suppose, if there's not a way. It gets back to that same thing. We keep having one supervisor for every, 2, 3 employees, and I'm wondering if there's not a way to sort of coordinate that without needing to have an additional.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, you can see that we actually haven't allocated any supervisory funds to any supervisor. We're actually going to absorb that in our other programs, through the mandatory programs, through the healthy, through the dental program, so we're not going to do that. We can definitely look at those FTEs. Those are the recommended right now of 3 FTEs. If we can absorb it in the dental program, we can definitely look at that. Those were recommended positions that we see will need moving forward to coordinate the program with what we currently know today.
Okay, so I saw Board Member Martin's hand up, and then, no, okay. Board Member Van Passen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a lot of the same questions when I read this. I would like to see a report come back and some discussion with the local dental association to see whether we are able to negotiate sort of a fee-for-service deal and a requisition system. And I'd be more than happy to take it up with the minister that, maybe it's a really good plan in the large urban areas, but geography of Haldimand, Norfolk just don't allow us to have a half-time dentist shuttling back and forth from one area of Haldimand and Norfolk to the other, and the capital investment we have to make in order to do that. I think it'd be much more efficient use of the provincial dollars to try to cut a deal with all the local dental outlets we have and refund the money. So if we have to take both streams at the same time, but I'd love to see a report come back. And I think we should have had this when we were in AMO. We could have whined to the minister then, but I think that the province will recognize that they never thought of the rural areas of Ontario, and there's cheaper ways to do things. So if you would like a motion to that effect, I'd be happy to move it. So.
Any further questions, and then I'll come back to you. Board Member Taylor.
Thank you, Chair Chop. Will the dentist be the only position that's split with Brant County? Yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, what was the question? Split?
The half-time dentist is going to be hired by both Haldimand, Norfolk, and Brant County. So that, yeah.
Any further questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. Board Member Van Passen?
If somebody could help me with the wording of a motion, I'd be happy to put one forward, but.
Through the chair to the Board of Health, please correct me if I've missed anything from your discussion earlier. But I have that staff report HSS 1939, Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care 2019 operational funding for Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program be received as information, and that staff be directed to explore a fee-for-service program with local dental associations and report back to the Board of Health.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking. I just didn't have time to write it down yet. So.
Board Member Columbus.
Madam Chair, I would second that motion, and I think we may get some good traction with the province if we distribute that motion across all health units across the province.
I would agree completely. I'm just wondering if we couldn't be perhaps even maybe a little more direct in the language with the thought of that distribution going around.
Because I'm sure that other communities are struggling with this situation.
Could we add something in there about sort of about the small, dollar amount with such a vast, geographical size that it's,
So-
our goal is to serve as obviously as many residents as possible or users as possible. And, do you know what I mean? And
So, thank you, Madam Mayor. We would definitely be able to write something in there to that effect, just about access and efficiencies, et cetera. I just want to clarify, though, that the guidelines strictly prohibits us from doing the fee-for-service. We're happy to go out and write a report. We're happy to go out and bring something forward on what that might look like from a resolution perspective to advocate moving forward for that model. But as it currently states, because we've asked the ministry these specific questions, as it currently sits right now, we are expected to deliver by hiring staff in-house. That is the expectation currently. So I just want to be clear that if we're putting this motion forward and we can bring such a report back for you with working with the Dental Association, that we still need to move forward on the requirements according to the ministry. So just for the board's consideration.
I think to Councillor Van Passen's point, though, it's to go out and speak with them and actually present a business case to the ministry, not just saying this is what we would like to do, but here's what a fee-for-service would look like. This is how many residents we would be able to serve under this model, and under the model that you are proposing that we accept with, a half a dentist spread over a couple of counties, this is, how many people we're likely to service. And there's no disputing that the one model obviously would be far more beneficial to our constituents than the other. So I guess we'll leave that, Councillor or Board Member Martin.
I would just like to add, additionally, I wonder if some language could be included that either staff or it's included in the request from the province that staff are interested in investigating partnerships on the private sector, even if that includes the hiring of our own in-house staff, however, incorporating them in a private business already, and making less of a request down the line in capital funding to add to the facilities that we already operate.
I think it's just important to put something together that actually involves a consultation with them and shows all the different options and how it might.
May I recommend to the board this afternoon that we put a more generic motion forward for us to bring a report forward, and that we write up a letter that you, Madam Chair, can sign off and we can send to the respective ministry and also circulate to the respective boards of health across the province.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, members of the Board of Health, from my perspective, I think there are two important issues. One, which is very affirming to the Board of Health and our advancement of the public health mission, which is that to the extent that the Ministry of Health has allocated $500,000, approximately $500,000, to advance the dental health of elderly, indigent, or elderly financially challenged individuals, I think that's an opportunity. However we can advance the health of those 1,000 beneficiaries, I think we should affirm that. Secondly, I think that we can make the case that in addition to supporting what the government has already put forth, that they should explore alternative service delivery models, and those alternative service delivery models include a fee-for-service paradigm, working with dentists who are currently in the community. From my vantage point, there's not a one-size-all solution for all parts of the province. In cities that are primarily urban, have many dentists, it may be easy to formulate, or relatively easy to formulate, a salaried model or a salaried plan. In more rural areas, where there's a relative dearth of practitioners, a blended service model or a fee-for-service model might work. So in my mind, I think the Board of Health, it would be helpful for us to say, one, we affirm and we're happy to take the money to advance this important public health goal. And number two, we think that there are other service delivery models that might serve our community better. So that would be my sense of it. And we're happy, and I'm happy to meet with, we can form some advocacy at the ministry level to articulate that plan.
Okay, thanks, sir. Okay, I think that sounds great. I'll read the motion then one more time here. That's Staff Report HSS 19-39, Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care 2019 Operational Funding for Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program, and be received as information that staff be directed to explore a fee-for-service program with local dental associations and report back to the Board of Health, and that staff prepare a letter for the Haldeman Norfolk Board of Health's approval for circulation to respective Board of Health and provincial ministries, and I lost my page. And that the Board of Health accept the $537,900 from the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, and that the approved 2019 Board of Health budget be amended to include the $537,900 from the Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program, and that the board approve the addition of the following 3 FTEs to deliver the Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program: half an FTE dentist, half FTE program assistant, 1 FTE for a dental assistant, and 1 FTE for a dental hygienist. And further, that the board direct staff to implement the Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program in accordance with the terms and conditions as per the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. Councillor Van Passen, you're so good with that?
As long as they're going to come back to council before they actually hire those people.
And that staff be directed to come back to council before the positions are filled. Councillor Columbus, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, and then just moving on, 2 items under communications. One's from the General Manager of Health and Social Services, and one for the Director of Quality Planning, Accountability, and Performance. Motion moved by Board Member Geisen, seconded by Board Member Michelli, that communication items A and B be received as information. All those in favor? Carried. And finally, motion moved by Councillor Geisen, seconded by Councillor Van Passen, that bylaw 2019-07BH, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Haldeman Norfolk Board of Health meeting held on the 3rd day of September 2019, be passed, signed by the Chair and Deputy County Clerk, and affixed with the corporate seal. All those in favor? Carried. And that this Board of Health meeting be adjourned at 2:53 p.m. Moved by Councillor Van Passen and seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that's carried. Perfect. Thank you very much.
On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work, we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a Southern County home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario, south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If if you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road and bound to be back for more.
Welcome, everyone. We are getting to our council and committee, and it's I guess really for me, someone from our area that is in achieving a ceremonial activity, and I'd like to call our mayor, Mayor Chop, and to present Ron Demarest with his CCM 3 Fire Suppression Professional Certificate. I can't talk.
Well, welcome, sir. I just want to make sure my microphone's on so everybody can hear us at home. But Mr. Demarest has been a Norfolk County fire training officer. He began his 35 years of fire service with Norfolk in 1984 for the Norfolk Station No. 2 in Cortland, where he then moved up the ranks to firefighter, station training officer, and in 1999 he was promoted to captain. After amalgamation in 2000, Station 2 became Norfolk County Station 6 in Cortland, and Ron currently serves as the volunteer Deputy District Station Chief at Station 6. As owner-operator of an auto body repair facility, Color Code Collision in Cortland for 13 years, he decided in 2015 to accept a part-time training officer position with Norfolk and was hired as the full-time training officer in 2018. Ron became an associate instructor for the Ontario Fire College and was instrumental in providing NFPA courses back to Norfolk County. As training officer, he coordinates the recruit training program for newly hired firefighters in Norfolk County and coordinates the training programs for the 11 stations, working with 254 volunteer firefighters to keep them safe with current skills and legislation required for the fast-evolving firefighting profession in the province of Ontario. He has received his CMM 1 for Fire Training Specialist, CMM 2 Fire Training Professional, and now I would like to congratulate him on receiving his CMM 3 for Fire Suppression Professional. So congratulations, sir. I think
Congratulations, Ron. Okay, moving on. Approval of agenda, changes to the agenda. There is one that deputation item AD, Bob Welsh, Friends of the Causeway Association, has requested his deputation to be removed to October 1st, 19. And are there any other changes to today's agenda? If not, can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Rabbits and Councillor Columbus, all those in favor? That is carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Councillor Councillor Van Passen. I'll get it straight yet today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to declare a deemed conflict on item 8E, number 1. It's report PW 19-55.
Number 1. That one. All right. That has been noted. Moving on to consent items. Are there any people who want to put that forward? Any problems? None? There are 2 consent items to today's agenda. If any members of committee wish to discuss a consent item or ask questions upon this, please identify so now, and we will move to the first item under staff report decision items as we move forward. If not, we will need a mover and seconder for the following recommendations within agenda item 4A and B. Anybody coming forward? No. That report, ES 1918, Revised Terms of Reference, Accessibility Advisory Committee be reserved as information, and that council adopt the revised Norfolk County Accessibility Advisory Committee terms as reference. Item B, that the Corporation of Norfolk County grant an exemption to policy CAO-10 to allow staff to execute and register any encroachment agreements in Great Lakes Land and Farms Crop Corporation, I guess that would be, being the current owner and the property of located at 8 Alice Street, Waterford, being legally described as Part Lot 3, Block 24, Plan 19B, and Part 1 at the reference plan of 37R8547, Norfolk County PIN 502780273LT. Recognize a future encroachment of a barrier-free ramp to provide access to the main entrance of the residence of the apartment building and overhead canopy at Alice Street in Waterford, and that the applicant's plan also cost associated encroachment applications, including the restoration and the agreement, and further that a necessary bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk and county clerk to execute the said encroachment agreement to be presented to council for adoption. Any questions? Councillor Columbus.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question with respect to that consent item B, the 80 Alice Street encroachment agreement situation. So should that
What? We'll
be
pull it and
pulled
deal with it
separately?
if you want to.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll just deal with the A part of it. We're dealing with A, and we will deal with it further on as we go. All those, I still need someone to move item A. Councillor Rabbits, Councillor Taylor, all those in favor? Okay, moving on to the next one. Okay, let me get things ordered here. What? You want to do with it now? Okay, we can. Yep, okay. 19. I thought we were going to do it differently. Sorry, that's my, okay. So now we are moving on with, I went through it, which was item B. Are there any, I think I've gone through it. Hopefully you've had something to go through with it. Are there any Councillor Columbus?
Thank you, Chairman Geisens. And my question was, if council did not approve this ramp, what would happen to this particular project? Like, what if we said no?
Who carries, going to carry that one? Sorry?
Through the chair to committee, from the council services perspective and the encroachment perspective, the project would sort of be on a halt right now because council has to approve or committee has to approve, and then there has to be an encroachment application and forthcoming bylaw that would go with it as well. So if council does not approve this request, then we would have to look at it differently as well. And I don't know from a public works perspective if they'd like to add, but that's from council service.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Van Passen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did send out an email over the weekend, and I'm wondering whether we can direct staff to look into this, but I'd like to see like a bump out around this ramp so that not everybody walking down the sidewalk has to go up and down. Like in downtown Simcoe, they have some of them where you just bump out and you walk, but you're at grade of the sidewalk. And I don't know if we lose a couple parking spaces there, but like right now, you got about a 1 foot drop off the sidewalk to the road level. So if, somebody else that is using a wheelchair or something like that are going to be forced to go up a ramp and back down it rather than just go around it. And, I don't want to hold up the encroachment agreement, but is that something that staff can work out down the road and Public Works look into it about, sort of building a bump out around the ramp?
You go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Van Passen and the rest of committee, that's actually an idea that we thought of at the very beginning before when we were sort of drafting this and exploring the option. As you read in the staff report, this is a very unique example of an encroachment request. It's technically one that we would not even recommend approval for, but because of the potential opportunities for the accessibility options, we thought that it's something that we could get the exemption from the policy, and it's kind of that unique. But certainly, if council's desirous or committee is desire to add that in, we could add something to the recommendation along the lines of, and that council's preferred encroachment be a sidewalk bump out utilizing existing parking in front of the building, and that the county clerk be directed to discuss further with the developer. We could add that.
Councillor Van Passen, will that pass what you're thinking about? Councillor Mayor Chop?
I'm just wondering, in that case, I think we kind of lose your bargaining power if you approve it with but our preferred option would be. Who's going to absorb the cost in that motion? Ourselves for the bump out?
Through the chair, we could add that it would be absorbed by the developer. That's sort
I
of
think
what
just maybe some more direct language as to the preferred option would be. I mean, if that's what council wishes, then it should be, but council requests a bump out with the cost to be borne by the developer. that's what
And-
you're looking for.
And sorry, through the chair, the reason why we would add the language of preferred encroachment would be, we really don't want to delay this project with the developer any longer. So if we say preferred and we go back to the developer and they say, yes, that's fine, then we don't need to bring another report back to council.
Councillor Columbus?
Yes, that was my concern, is if there is a bump out, it should be at the cost of the developer.
So we're going to do it now, or are we going to leave it till next week, or whatever? How do you want to deal with it?
Through the chair, if there's a member of committee here that would like to move and then another to second it, we could add that extra language to it where the preferred option is the bump out sidewalk absorbed at the cost of the developer, and then it would just be direction, and then a bylaw would be forthcoming as well with that.
Okay, Councillor Michele?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In that event, then, I would be willing to make that motion.
Okay, Councillor Taylor? Oh, you're moving it? Seconding? Okay. Moved by Councillor Michele and seconded by Councillor Taylor. Is there any other questions or anything coming forward? Go ahead.
Is language for that amendment written? Could I hear it? And
Yes.
Sure, and through the chair, that council's preferred encroachment be a sidewalk bump out utilizing existing parking in front of the building, and that the county clerk be directed to discuss further with the developer, and then we would add in the wording of the developer would absorb the cost of such bump out.
I'd like to move that amendment, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to council. Prior to being 100% committal to installing a bump out on this road surface, I would just have to caution you that we would need to look at the actual site in order to determine what exactly those impacts will be. Just from a public works standpoint, I would just encourage you to allow us to have some time to look at it before being 100% committal on such a thing. Thank you.
Go ahead.
If I think that covers it with the preferred language. If it wasn't possible, then I suppose it's no longer preferred.
Councillor Columbus.
Well, this is a council and committee meeting, and everything will not be ratified till we have a full council meeting. So there is 2 weeks. Was that ample time, Mr. Gabi?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, yeah, I believe that should at least give us an idea of whether we're going to create any other issues by doing such a thing.
Thank you.
So what are we doing now? Yes, so I guess we're going to, we have a mover and a seconder, so all those in favor, I guess. That is, see that again, please? That is carried. Moving on. Presentations. There are none. Closed session, I guess, that's where we are going to deal with closed session items following deputations. Okay, fine. Staff reports. Staff report ESC 1933, Reclaims of Handling Agreement. Shelley to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Frank Cowan Company Limited is currently formalizing claims handling procedures, and the purpose of this report is to seek approval to sign a claims handling agreement that formally authorizes the county to handle and respond to certain claims internally, subject to the terms of the agreement. Signing the agreement would permit Norfolk County to continue to handle claims up until such time as the reporting requirements have been triggered. The claims handling agreement is flexible, and if circumstances or facts change in the matter and the claim is reported, the Frank Cowan Company may allow for continued handling of the matter by the county. Staff are recommending approval of the recommendation to authorize staff to sign the agreement with Frank Cowan Company. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Chop?
Thank you, Chair Geisens. Could you just explain, Shelley, what the current process is?
Through the chair to Mayor Chop, it's exactly what is listed in this report. We just haven't had a formal claims handling agreement, so it just actually writes down what we've been doing for the last several years.
So in years past, Frank Cowan handled all these claims, did they not?
No.
Many years, maybe not this past year or 2 years, but my understanding was that they used to, as part of the service that they provided Norfolk County, they actually did some of this work.
Through the chair to Mayor Chop, no, we always handled claims internally since my time here with Norfolk County, up until a certain deductible level or when the reporting requirements is listed in the report. So we've always done that ratio inside handling claims and then Frank Cowan handling claims as well.
Okay, so we're not taking on additional work. The other problem I have, I'm assuming that Frank Cowan drafted this agreement?
This is through the chair, yes. This is a standard agreement that's used in other municipalities through Frank Cowan. It was reviewed by the county solicitor and documents exactly what we have been doing in the past as well.
So I guess the big challenge that I have is on page 30, just below the bullet points. It says, if at any time a claim is not reported to Cowan, I'm assuming that's if Norfolk County inadvertently does not report a claim, that otherwise should have been as per the above criteria, or Cowan requests a claim to be reported which subsequently is not, Cowan reserves the right to deny coverage, which means that then the claimant would now come back upon Norfolk County because we failed to, for whatever reason, if something was mishandled. So for me, I would not vote to approve this unless that line was struck from the agreement.
Through the chair to Mayor Chop, that has always been a practice, and as part of the insurance portfolio, if we fail to report, we may not have insurance coverage if that's not documented and sent when it's a requirement to be reported.
See, to me, though, there's a little bit of a difference between something that's past practice and challenging that in court and now actually signing a form and having it formally documented.
Through the chair, certainly can take that feedback back to Frank Cowan and try to negotiate this clause out. I'm not certain how successful we will be, but certainly if that's the direction of committee, then we can certainly go back and have that discussion with the insurer.
Well, I think if they were confident that that's always been past practice, then they could try to uphold that in court, that that's always been past practice. But I don't think I would be signing my name to it on a document that now puts the liability back on Norfolk County for doing what I think probably should be some of their work.
Certainly we can go back to Cowan's and have that discussion.
Councillor Columbus.
So really, we have 2 weeks before our next council meeting, full council, to get that information, right? And my question is, who does our adjusting, our claims adjusting? Is that an outside adjuster, or does Ms. Borland do it?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, that's correct. We would have 2 weeks to come back to have that discussion with Frank Cowan Company, so we can endeavor to take that. We do a combination of adjusting in Norfolk County, so we can handle claims, and we do handle claims inside with internal resources. The supervisor of risks does take the brunt of that. I think in a later report you'll see that I think we believe we handled 80% or almost 80% of claims internally, and then we've used an outside adjusting firm, and currently we use Claims Pro.
Thank you.
Councillor Mayor Chop.
Thank you, Chair Geisens. So Shelley, is there anything within the insurance contract itself that requires us to do this?
Through the chair, yes, a claims handling agreement is part of the RFP, was part of the RFP and the contract, and they're just formalizing the documents now with all municipalities.
Okay. So would it be, I just think, prudent then to move for a deferral into the council until the council meeting, until staff can report back with council's displeasure at including the clause, if at any time a claim is not reported to Cowan that otherwise should have been as per the above criteria, or Cowan requests a claim to be reported which subsequently is not, Cowan reserves the right to deny coverage.
Councillor Van Passen, I've seen your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also had some questions. If we go to our information package, they actually have a listing of some of the claims that we're making to ourselves, because we got a deductible of, what, $25,000? And like, we're making claims for $800, $1,000. Like, at what point do you just say it's not worth the paperwork and you just go fix it? Like, if you bend the fender on your own loader, you just fix it. You don't write an insurance claim to yourself and take it out of a different pot of money, because the paperwork costs more to do it than it actually does to fix it. So are we required to report little items like, we hit our own garage door and we're going to run that through as an insurance claim?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Passen, just flipping to the information package memo now. It's not a reported claim, the example that you provided. It is tracked internally, and we do track that and pay for that out of the insurance, self-insurance reserve fund, so that accident or incident is covered in the self-insurance. The reason for tracking that is we can see trends in analysis and where we need to provide mitigation strategies, where we need to provide training, and all sorts like that. So it's an in and out. We don't send that over to the insurance company or an adjuster to do that work, but we do track it and monitor it so we can see some trend analysis.
Point, like, rather, if you got $1,000 item, to do the in and out, to do the paperwork from one department to another department, why don't you just fix the kicked in door out of your own repair budget rather than doing the shuffling of the paper back and forth? And does that make sense at some certain point, right? Like, maybe it's $1,000, maybe it's $2,500, maybe it's $5,000. That, again, if the snowplow backs into our own garage door, why do we got to shuffle a bunch of paperwork? You just fix it and move on, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Passen, that's an excellent question, and certainly it would change a little bit of how we do the accounting in Norfolk County, but we can certainly take that back and with our finance team have that discussion if we want to increase maintenance budgets across the operating departments rather than have it come out of the self-insurance reserve fund.
Your chop.
Just one more question as well. Since there's only, 5 or 6 companies that handle municipal insurance in Ontario, I'm just wondering if Cowan puts up a fuss about continuing to include this criteria, given that we're going to be putting the insurance contract out to an RFP again, if we might be able to see whether other companies similarly include the same clause in their claims handling agreements.
Sure. Through the chair to Mayor Chop, we'll reach out to our municipal partners and we'll get some feedback on if everyone has that in their claims handling agreement.
Thank you. And I'd like to advance the motion that I had before on the floor.
Okay, put it forward for us, if you would, again, please.
Okay, that staff have discussions with Frank Cowan to express council's displeasure with the clause that if at any time a claim is not reported to Cowan and that otherwise should have been as per the above criteria, or Cowan requests a claim be reported which subsequently is not, Cowan reserves the right to deny coverage and report back to council at the September 17th council meeting.
Okay. Councillor Chop has moved. Seconder, Councillor Taylor. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor? That is passed. Moving on to staff report FS 1930, which replies to our SWIFT financing agreement.
Through the chair.
Katie and Brent.
Through the chair to council. The SWIFT has, as you may know, SWIFT has secured funding from the Canada-Ontario Small Communities Fund for approximately $127.4 million. Their first phase of the project is a total of $31.7, and it's for 3 counties, Norfolk County, Wellington County, and Lambton County. They've issued the request for proposals for the internet service providers, which will close on September 19th. And in the meantime, the 3 CAOs and treasurers from each of the counties met with representatives from SWIFT for the intention of signing an agreement or getting council's approval, securing council's approval to enter into a letter of intent, which is basically to secure a funding guarantee when SWIFT goes out to for request for proposals for a credit facility. It's a requirement that they'll need to have a cash flow in order to, because there'll be a timing difference between when they have to pay the internet service providers and when they'll receive funding from OMAFRA. So this letter of intent will provide that security or the backing for the proposal. It will also, it's non-binding, I understand, and it was, our Norfolk County's portion is 1.57 of the $8.3 million that's been allotted for a funding guarantee. My understanding is there's not any requirement to have any outlay of funding, but of course, if anything changes once it is negotiated with the with the credit facility, it'll depend a lot on what the outcome is once they secure a credit facility, and once we have more negotiations going through with SWIFT. So, but if there is anything definitely that changes or that we feel there is any kind of cash outlay or putting Norfolk County in a position that any higher risk, that we'll definitely be bringing back updates to council at that time. This, I have looked into the agreement. It has not been reviewed by our county solicitor, so we will make sure that is reviewed now that our county solicitor is on our team and before any agreement is signed. With that, I'll answer any questions that council may have.
Okay. Councillor Columbus and then Mayor Chop.
Thank you, Chairman Geisens. And my question is, what was the criteria for divvying up the dollars? I see Norfolk receives $8.3 million, but there's 31.7 altogether. So do they do it on population, or is it the amount of roads that we have, or?
Through the chair, it was based on the amount of roads within Norfolk County and unserviced roads more than anything, really.
So the other municipalities involved in this are, which ones are they? Wellington and Lambton. So they would have more unserviced areas and more roads that were unserviced than Norfolk?
Through the chair, it's basically was an algorithm that they had. We have quite a large, but it's also to do with the size of the area too, the coverage. So it was kind of a formula that was done to do that, to determine that.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Chop?
Just further to that with Councillor Columbus, it was also based, the formula in part, on the amount of money that the municipality put in at the time. And I can't remember the exact figure under the previous council, but whatever you guys had committed, that formed part of that equation. The other thing I just wanted to add to this, so part of this came out of a meeting with the Western Wardens Caucus, and actually there was, I can't remember the total number of municipalities that are in the program. 14, somewhere around there, okay. And so what the challenge is that the job needs to be entirely complete before OMAFRA pays the money back. So what they were looking at was 2 options. Either each municipality backstop their own job, or they look at a combination of all municipalities banding together. The problem that I had with that was what they were suggesting to begin with was that all 14 municipalities would have to sign the agreement and they would all band together. We are fortunately one of 3 municipalities that's in the initial sort of pilot project, if you will, or what they're calling phase 2. that means that we were going to have to wait until the end of phase 3, which could be several years out, before we were removed from, being basically a backstop for these other municipalities. So it actually came out of a conversation that I had with them where I had made this particular suggestion, so which is why I'm in support of it today, was that, listen, why don't we just do this in 2 separate groups? So Norfolk County will backstop along with the other two municipalities for phase 2, and then we will be off of that agreement with the credit facility, and then the other municipalities, the 9 remaining, will backstop their own project, and we won't have anything to do with that. So in the long run, this will be the most, I think, the safest and most beneficial to Norfolk County.
Further? Do we have a motion for this by any chance? Councilor Columbus,
Chair, I'll move the recommendation as printed on page 35.
seconder. Councilor Taylor. That council authorize the mayor to sign the letter of intent SWIFT credit facility in order to demonstrate Norfolk County commitment to be prepared to provide a guarantee regarding the planned broadband network infrastructure project. Any questions are coming forward? Councillor Michele?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for council's information, if anyone does have any other peripheral questions or concerns, I will be attending a SWIFT Board of Directors meeting on Friday, and I would be happy to take any questions or concerns to that meeting. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to staff report CS 1921, re-award of request RFP CSF 1901 Fire Dispatch Service 2020 to 224. Bill, to present.
Thank you. Through the chair to county council, I won't be presenting this report, and I'd like to introduce interim Fire Chief Gordon Stillwell, who him and his team had worked on the proposal as well as the tender. So I'll turn it over to Gord to give a brief summary of the report and answer any questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Mo. Through the chair to council, we're here today seeking council's approval to award the RFP for fire dispatch services for a 5-year term, which and to the lowest price per point bidder. This RFP was developed and advertised per Norfolk County's policy, Norfolk County's purchasing policy. After the completion of the RFP evaluation process, staff's recommended executing the contract with the City of St. Catharines to provide dispatching services for Norfolk County Fire Department. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have an escape clause in this deal in case something happens over the term that we don't care for?
Yes, there's language in the contract that allows us to agree to remove ourselves.
Further? Is there a mover or a seconder for the following? Oh, sorry, Councillor Van Passen. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I brought up before that my dislike for this price per point system, and then not be provided sort of any information on any other bidders. And I was wondering if we would be able to get that this is a qualified bidder. I'm assuming the other bidders were qualified, but based on a price per point. Now, that doesn't necessarily make it the lowest price. It just makes it on the score they got. So I wonder if we could be provided with that information before we make a decision on this.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Van Passen, I apologize. I did see your email late this morning, and I did respond to you. Yes, we can provide that by confidential information, and certainly send that to council.
Councillor Chop.
Thank you,
Mayor
Chair Geisen. I guess I received an email late last night, and I'm a little bit concerned for a couple of reasons. We recently made a big change in our fire department, and to pull something from the Simcoe Reformer article. That was a couple of statements that were provided by me in the media release on behalf of council. But it basically went on to say that at the end of the day that we were going to put some of the power back in the hands of our volunteers, and that we wanted to ensure full consultation moving forward with our fire departments. And the email struck me late last night when I received it, because it says specifically under consultations that consultation has been received from the volunteer station chiefs. And I specifically received an email last night from a volunteer station chief, without naming any names, that felt that he was not consulted and that he felt that he had input to provide into this RFP. And I'm just wondering if perhaps we could defer approving this this evening, because this council did take a big step in changing and wanting to change the direction and wanting to empower our volunteers again. And one of the things that I've often heard sort of, throughout my campaign and since I'm here now, is that, we have so many employees and so many volunteers that come forward and they say, yes, I'm an employee, or yes, I'm a volunteer, and at the end of the day, I'm also a taxpayer too. And they see areas where efficiencies could be made, where an RFP could be bettered. And I think that it's really important that, given the mandate that we have and given the changes that we've just made, that we defer this, the approval of this RFP today, and we go back and we hear individually from our station chiefs what they have to say about it, and if there's a way that we could possibly even retender this to make this more suited to the operation and save Norfolk County some dollars in the long term. So with that, I'd like to move for a deferral.
Move for deferral. Councillor Michele?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would have to concur with the mayor's comments. I have also received some personal conversations with some of our volunteer firefighters, and I do think that they also believe that there are other ways that we might be able to perform this service at a reduced cost. So I would be happy to second the mayor's motion.
Okay.
Through the chair to the mover and seconder, just for clarification, do you have a time frame that you'd like to bring this back for, or just to some wording clarification within the motion itself?
I would trust staff to be able to make that judgment. They know when the contract's coming due, they know how quickly we need to move, and so they can bring it back to council once they've had a chance to consult with the district chiefs.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Through the chair, if I might be given the opportunity to maybe just do a review of that RFP process. The point scoring is relatively common for different procurement, but I'd be happy to provide an objective look at how the scoring was done, and at least provide some opinion back to council with some knowledge of the contract expiry date in case it is time sensitive.
Go ahead.
To you, Mr. Chair. I think that's great, and we appreciate that. I think it's still also important, just given some of the history of what's gone on in the fire departments here in Norfolk County, that we do also reach out to the volunteers. And I know, Chris, that you're probably going to be out there talking to them anyway over the next couple weeks, and so maybe this is something you could also sort of have a chat with them directly about and get their input.
Anything further? Councillor Columbus?
See, Mr. Goodland would like to speak to this subject.
Thank you, to the chair. No, the only comments I were going to add is, if it helps council, obviously this the RFP was prepared and went out in May, so staff had started working on this, I think, immediately in January. And the district chiefs, it was my understanding, did meet on this, and they chose 2 district chiefs to move forward to be part of this process. The other concern I have is, speaking with Chief Stillwell, is we're going to have to talk to St. Catharines, because I believe this is up the year December 31st, so time is really closing in on us. So I think I would like to be able to talk to St. Catharines and make sure they will extend this past December 31st, or we won't have anybody in place for this, unfortunately. That's the only points. Thank you.
Your job.
Just one final point on that then. All I know is that in the section from the consultation, it says the volunteer station chiefs were consulted. And I just want to let you know that I did receive an email from one that feels that he wasn't consulted. So I think that's why it's important that if we're putting that they have been consulted, we actually need to consult them and involve them in the process. And
I have a motion on the floor. Oh, sorry. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to staff report CS 1923, re-paramedics technology. Who's got that one over here? There we go.
Through the chair to county council.
Go ahead.
I will, again, not be presenting this report, and I will turn it over to Chief Sarah Page. Sarah and her team had, again, worked on this, and is, with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah to present and answer any questions.
Thanks, Bill. Through the chair.
Go ahead.
We are recommending a single source procurement, I cannot say that word, for our electronic patient care reporting forum. We've been using a particular source for approximately the last 5 years when we switched from paper to electronic, and currently is not meeting our needs with basically data management, integration, software support. We've been relying on our internal IT. The problem, of course, is that we work 24/7 and require further support. In addition, this new program, well, not new to us, is across the province in 46 of the 54 ambulance services that are across the province. And we are looking to improve what we are doing internally. It will provide some efficiencies for us, especially with data management, reporting, accountability, and transparency. Currently, we have 24,300 in our operating for software. This is a big jump up to 64,000 a year. That includes, however, all the hardware, support, accessibility, integration, and analytics systems all together. In addition, to lessen that blow slightly, it does pull everything out of capital and into the operating portion of our budget, which therefore is applicable to the Land Ambulance Service Grant, and therefore would be applicable to the 50% back from the province. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Questions, Councillor Chop?
thank you, Councillor Geisens. I'm wondering, we're looking at a budget shortfall here.
That is correct. Over the 4 years, we would be looking at a budget shortfall.
So I guess this is another one where I'm wondering, it's not that I don't support this, I do, but until we know what the province is looking at doing with the ambulance services, is this the most logical move to make right now when we could see some announcements coming out in a couple months when we are not really on track to stick it on our operating budget, and when we're coming through our budget deliberations really in the next couple of months where we could look at putting this in for next year, and we would also have a better indication of what the province is doing at that time. Would that not make more sense to just defer this a couple months until our budget deliberations?
Through the chair, while I understand that our contract likewise is up December of 2019, we have received notification that we got 4% additional funding in 2019 budget year, with the alleged response that that will include a further increase in 2020. However, that being said, we can't guarantee that, but we are looking to move forward and save the money in other portions of our budget.
Mr. McQueen, would you have any comments on that?
I guess my only other comment would be in terms of any transition the province may be moving forward with Land Ambulance. Because it's a fairly standardized program, it's used by most of the services. On the patient side, there is some benefits to having a more seamless transition of patient records between EMS and the hospital where we're transferring patients. So there may be a benefit to that. So I think it's more about being at the front end of the change rather than maybe catching up from behind.
Thank you, sir.
I thought Councillor Van Passen.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just like a question to staff to make sure I understand this. We have $24,300 in an operating budget that you want to increase to $65,870. But at the same time, we can cancel the $35,000 out of the capital budget. So the change in budget is really only about $6,500. But the province actually subsidized the operating budget, but not the capital. So we could actually switch and come out money ahead if in a perfect world.
Through the chair, and finance can likely comment on this as well. That is correct. All our capital assets are only amortized over the length of the asset, so that is only a certain portion you get back. Anything in our operating budget is eligible for the Land Ambulance Services Grant. So of the $64,000, you would be eligible for $32,000 back.
Would you like a mover of the recommendation then, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead. Councilor Van Passen, are you moving it? Yes? Moved by Mayor Chop. Any other questions at all? Do you want me to go through it? That council accept CS 1923 paramedic technology as information, and that council permits a single source procurement as outlined in Norfolk County Purchasing Policy ECS 02 section 4.8.4 with some technologies incorporated to supply medic EPCR software licensing hardware support integration excuse me, and antilistic for Norfolk County Paramedics Services, and further that the current operating computer author software service and capital ruggized computer, I don't know what that means, but any replacement budgets be merged in a single operating EPCR service budget line totaling $64,730 annually for the budget 2020 to 2024, and that further that the general manager community service be authorized to sign a 4-year agreement with from November 1st, 2019 to October 31st, 2023 with InterDev Technologies, Inc. to provide software, hardware support, integration, and angelistic, I can't pronounce that very well. The Norfolk County Paramedic Services be described as in this report. Anything further? Councillor Columbus.
Just to clarify, I noticed that the current provider is good till December 13, 2019, and the motion that we're recommending is November 1st, 2019. So will there be an overlap? Is that the case, Ms. Page?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, there will not be an overlap other than the two contracts will exist for the month, but the amount that is budgeted right now, we only pay when the actual form is submitted, so we won't be paying the current provider because we will not be submitting any forms to that platform.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Is anyone ready to move the recommendation? Sorry? Okay, no, I only have one so far, Columbus and Mayor Chop. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to the next one, staff report to ECS 1931, 2019 Attorney General consultation on municipal liabilities and insurance costs. Councillor, sorry? Yeah, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to really quickly, before staff leaves the room, take this opportunity because I see that there's a staff member in the room that was on a very cool video through Blue Star Ford representing Norfolk County, and I just wanted to thank staff because when I saw that, I thought, what a great opportunity. Thank you for jumping on that. Thank you for being an ambassador for Norfolk County and branding us perfectly. Thank you.
So we're on to the next one. Shelley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this report is to advise Council that the Attorney General is seeking input on joint and several liability, insurance costs, and the impact of liability chill on the delivery of public services. And we're seeking authorization for Norfolk County to provide a written submission by the deadline of September 27th, 2019. In 2010 and 2014, the previous council sent letters supporting changes to the Negligence Act and joint and several liability as described in the report. Municipal operations have broad jurisdiction and are responsible for many different operations. As public authorities, municipalities are often the target of claims for loss and damages. Staff are recommending that the mayor be authorized to send a letter to the Attorney General and copy to AMO affirming Norfolk County's support on liability reform. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there a mover and seconder by any chance to move that? Councilor Columbus, Council Taylor? Any questions? If not, all those in favor, I should say. Thank you. Moving on to Waste Management Review, Staff Report PW 1954. Who's got this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Council, I have with us here today is Marissa Bachler, our Waste Management Supervisor, who was the author of this report and put together all this information that was previously requested back at budget deliberations earlier this year. So this is an information report with a few recommendations, and Marissa will kind of give a brief overview, and then we will answer any questions that you have.
So through the chair to council, as Jason had mentioned, this is coming at a request from budget deliberations through a resolution. And we'll walk you through section by section. So just a brief overview, we service about 30,200 homes with curbside collection. So we'll start with garbage collection and disposal. Garbage is collected weekly with a bag limit of 4 bags per dwelling unit and 8 bags for commercial property. In 2018, we collected approximately 15,000 tons of garbage, which equates to about 500 kilos per household. Norfolk Disposal Services was awarded the collection contract in 2017, and their contract expires in 2024. And the 2018 cost for collecting curbside garbage was approximately $961,400. And from curbside collection, our waste is taken to the Energy from Waste facility in Brampton, which is managed by Emerald Energy from Waste facility, and it's an incinerator. The reason why we're taking our material to the incinerator was council back, I believe, in around 2013, when council was notified that the Tom Howe landfill that was shared between Norfolk County and Haldeman was closing in 2015. That council at the time had a wish to look at alternatives to landfilling. So they had put out a RFP, I believe, and this was the solution that they came up with, was the incineration in Brampton. So the cost for haulage and disposal at the incinerator is approximately $1.84 million from 2018. And just as a little note, there's been a lot of information back and forth right now about a shortage of landfill capacity in Ontario. The Ontario Waste Management Association had put out a report earlier this year estimating that current landfill capacity could be used up by 2032. So in summary, for curbside garbage, the total cost for the program in 2018 was approximately $2.8 million. And the next program is the Furniture and Appliance Program, which is sometimes referred to as the Bulky Collection Program as well. So the last time the program ran was in 2018, and it allows residents to put out an unlimited amount of curbside furniture and appliances for pickup. And the current program is on a 3-year rotation with the next program happening in 2021. In 2018, we collected just under 1,000 tons of material for an approximate cost with collection and disposal being just under $230,000. And this is budgeted from the levy about $100,000 annually to spread out that budget over a 3-year period. The next program is the recycling collection and processing. So recycling is collected weekly, again, by Norfolk Disposal. Curbside collection cost was $1.09 million in 2018. Residents recycled approximately 5,200 tons of recyclable material, equating to about 172 kilograms per household. The cost for processing recycling is approximately $837,700, and the processing of recycling is completed in Norfolk County at our facility on Grigg Drive by HGC Management, and their contract expires next October. In addition, once our material is sorted, it's sent off to market where we receive a revenue for that, and in 2018 we received approximately $574,900 for that, which helps offset costs for our processing and collecting of recyclables. In the past couple of years, there has been some challenges with the marketing of recyclables. In 2018, there was a lot of information out there about China not accepting recyclables. So that's been something that's affected markets, and in turn, we're seeing less revenue as in previous years. Additionally, we're experiencing challenges with bagged recycling in plastic bags for collection. Our processor has identified some challenges. We're seeing that it's being something that's happening more regularly, that people are putting recycling out in plastic bags rather than using the recycling boxes that are provided. So what's happening is conveyor belts at the recycling facility are being jammed up. Additionally, someone has to manually open those bags, which is extremely time consuming and labor intensive. So we're trying to reduce that, and one of the recommendations is to stop collecting recycling in plastic bags curbside. In addition to the money we receive back from the sale of our recyclables, we also are able to submit information through RPRA, which is the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority, through the annual data call. So it allows municipalities to receive up to 50% of their costs for the Blue Box program back. So in 2018, we received approximately $814,100 from that Blue Box program. And we're also given a diversion rate because we submit all of our information for our whole program, and Norfolk County's diversion rate was approximately around 51%. The other change that's been highly talked about in the news the last little while is the transition to producer responsibility for the Blue Box program. And just recently, some dates as to when that transition is going to happen were released. And there's a timeline of January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2025. So there's still a lot of details to be ironed out on that. It's just in its infancy, and as we get more information, we'll be happy to share that with council and keep them updated. Also, the federal government has announced that they're also looking at banning single-use plastics and reducing. So that's another piece to the recycling program. So in summary, for the recycling program, total costs were around $594,800 when you take into account the sale of recyclables and the grant we get for the Blue Box program. So next we'll move into the leaf and yard waste collection and processing. We have a curbside collection program for 11 urban communities, and those who do not receive curbside collection program have the option of bringing material to the transfer stations year-round, and there's no charge for that. The curbside collection is completed again by Norfolk Disposal under the collection contract, and the cost in 2018 for the collection of leaf and yard waste was approximately $142,600. T. DeVos Trucking Limited out of Langton provides the composting for the leaf and yard waste material for both curbside and the depot program. It's very nice having a local composting facility, as we don't incur haulage costs for having to take it elsewhere outside the municipality. The cost for composting leaf and yard waste in 2018 was approximately $68,700. The fall 2019 curbside program for leaf and yard waste will begin on October 21st and will run until November 29th, and that'll occur for 6 weeks. Over the spring, we saw a increase in participation in the program and in tonnage. Between the depot at the transfer station and the curbside program, we saw about a 17% increase in tonnage. So in 2018, we collected about 1,200 tons from curbside, and altogether about 2,000 tons diverted from landfill, and that equated to about 81 kilos per household. We also offer backyard composters to residents from our admin buildings for $35.75 to assist those for diverting material from landfill as well. So a suggested improvement on the leaf and yard waste program, we've heard quite a bit from residents about wanting a summer collection. So in this report, we've proposed adding a summer pickup 1 week per month for the months of June, July, August, and September. There's an estimated cost based on 40 tons of $6,200 per month, but there's a potential cost savings by that material being removed from the garbage stream of approximately $2,000 per month. And then another suggested improvement based on what we heard from the spring leaf and yard waste collection was to look at maybe extending the period over an 8-week program, doing alternating weeks. So you would still have your 4-week collection, but it would start earlier in April so that depending on what happens with the weather, we can provide that service to residents when they're cleaning up their yards. This past year, we had collection just throughout the month of May, and we heard a lot of feedback from residents indicating that they wish to see something in April to assist with the warmer weather that we sometimes have in April. So overall for 2018, leaf and yard waste program costs approximately $211,300. So moving into our household hazardous waste events, we host 4 household hazardous waste events, one day in different towns each year, where residents can bring things such as paint, motor oil, propane tanks, batteries, and other items that they may have around their home. In 2019, we have 2 remaining events, one happening September 14th in Langton, and the other happening in Port Dover on October 12th. TerraPure Environmental is the current contractor that collects and disposes of the hazardous waste for us. In 2018, we had just under 1,300 cars between all 4 events and received about 90 tons of material. And the program cost about $67,100. But from that, we received $34,000 back from Stewardship Ontario. Once the event ends, we can submit for a return on some of the eco fees that are collected when residents buy certain materials. So that's where the $34,000 reimbursement comes from. The MHSW, or the Municipal Hazardous Waste and Special Waste Program, is currently also undergoing a transition to producer responsibility. The wind-up of the Household Hazardous Waste Program will happen June 30th, 2021, and we're supposed to receive an approved plan from the province by December 31st of this year. So that'll assist us as to how our events will be going forward, but we're hoping that there'll be more options for residents for retailer take-back as well. The next program is Christmas tree recycling. So we offer 10 drop-off depots for residents that are open 3 weeks following Christmas. And in 2018, approximately 1,228 trees were collected, which is equivalent to 12 tons of material diverted from landfill. And those are internal costs. The roads department assists waste management by handling those trees and doing the chipping for us. We also have 2 non-hazardous waste transfer stations, one in Simcoe and the other one is out near Port Rowan, South Walsingham transfer station. We have a drop-off area for residents to bring in garbage, metal and wood, as well as leaf and yard waste and brush. The drop-off area transfer and disposal is subcontracted to Norfolk Disposal through Walker's Environmental, and that's a 5-year term with an additional 5-year extension. The cost to residents for dropping material off is a minimum fee of $16 up to 130 kilograms, and then after that, a tipping rate of $122 per ton. Yard waste and tires are free, and everything else is chargeable based on weight. The transfer stations also hold $16 days, the years that we don't have a furniture and appliance pickup curbside, so that residents can bring in a load of furniture and appliances at a flat fee of $16 during a set week in the spring and the fall. And the fall event is scheduled for the week of September 16th to the 21st. Additionally, Norfolk County received approximately $14,600 in revenue from the sale of scrap metal that's collected at the transfer station. So there's a summary table of both transfer stations, the number of cars, as well as the operating costs and revenue that were received from the operation of those sites. The next that we'll move into is the organics program. That was one of the recommendations from the resolution that information was to be brought forward about a potential organics program. So an organics program would entail providing residents with a 12-gallon green bin that residents can wheel out to the end of the road for collection. Costs for the green bin range from $14 to $20. And we use an estimate about 2.5 kilograms per household per week for that to get an estimated cost of collection being $1.04 million. And we use similar estimations of what we currently pay for hauling of garbage. And to remove that material, it would be an approximate cost of $200,000. And then the cost for composting the organic material or the green bin material, it can range from $100 to $150 per ton. So it will range between $400,000 to $600,000 for an overall cost for the first year being $2.445 million, and that includes the initial cost of providing green bins to residents. It should be noted that these are very high-level approximated costs. It's hard to know what the participation rate would be like until we have a year under our belts and can really look at those numbers. In April 30th of 2018, the Ontario government released the Food and Organic Waste Policy Statement. In there, they're trying to encourage and increase diversion from landfill of organic waste. So they set out certain targets that they wanted different municipalities to meet. Norfolk County falls under a target of Section 2.1C of that statement, and it's basically saying that we have to try to achieve 50% waste reduction and recovery of food and organic waste by single-family dwellings by 2025. However, currently the province is facing some challenges with the processing of organic and green bin material. Right now there's a shortage of capacity for processing that material available, as some of these processors are having difficulty with odor challenges in meeting regulatory requirements by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So right now, staff are recommending to wait on an organics program to see if additional facilities come on board with this 2025 deadline coming forward, because right now there's the potential that we could go out and ask for this information, but we may not have anyone that's willing to take our material because no one has the available capacity to process it under their ECA, which is their environmental compliance approval with the Ministry of Environment that allows them certain tonnage to process at their facilities. And I think we're close to the end. We also have closed landfill sites in Norfolk County that we're responsible for. We have 5 here for monitoring, and that's contracted out to Peter McCallum, and they complete the monitoring of groundwater, surface water, and stormwater ponds. In 2018, the approximate cost for this was $97,600. In addition, we also have to pay Norfolk County's portion for monitoring at the Tom Howe landfill site, and it was based on the amount of waste that was put in place by each municipality. So Norfolk County share is approximately 56.52%. And in 2018, Norfolk County paid Haldeman County $2,259,000 for its portion of monitoring and maintenance at the Tom Howe landfill. And then we also print the waste collection guide, and it's a tool for residents that is sent out annually, and it gives an overview of the waste programs that we do offer to residents. It is also a calendar that provides dates when events are happening, for example, leaf and yard waste or hazardous waste, whenever there's a collection delay due to statutory holidays. So it's a useful piece that a lot of people have given us feedback that they really like receiving and use it to refer to throughout the year. The one challenge that we do have is that in order for it to be at homes by Christmas time for residents to use by January, is that we have to have final sign off on the guide by mid-October. So the only challenge we do have is that if changes are made after that, it's not reflected in the guide, so sometimes that can be a little bit confusing to residents. And then the last piece was illegal dumping. So we've been seeing the last year an increase in illegal dumping, not only in the rural areas, but also in the urban areas. To date this year, Norfolk County, our contractor has spent $1,700 on collecting illegal dump material, and that was as of July 1st. As of the end of August, it was up to $1,900. However, it should be noted that these costs don't include what's picked up by our roads department as well. So one thing that would be beneficial to staff and to the bylaw officers is potentially looking at having associated fines in the waste management bylaw for illegal dumping, because right now we currently don't have anything like that. So that pretty much summarizes waste management in a nutshell. Just as a closure, in 2018, Norfolk County managed approximately 26,700 tons of waste from its residents, or approximately 884 kilograms per household, at an overall cost of approximately $7 million. So there's some recommendations in the report for staff to consider. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a bunch, so maybe I'll just do a couple and then see if some of my colleagues chip away at them. This was great. Thank you. I've been waiting for this since budget. And a lot of the stuff in here makes perfect sense. Your comment about starting earlier with the yard pickup, is it a concern at all for your department that starting earlier means more wet weather, therefore more tonnage in the pickups?
Through the chair to Councillor Martin. So there was a potential last year as well, or even this spring, with the delay of the program into May, that initially in the waste collection guide it was stated that collection was going to be at the end of April. So some residents did have bags out for the 2 weeks prior to collection starting. So, you know, it's kind of really hard to predict the weather, even on a weekly basis, so it's hard to know what would happen. But I did hear from some residents saying that they didn't want to wait for collection in May and that they unfortunately put it in their garbage instead. So hopefully trying to get that out of the garbage stream, it's cheaper to manage through the leaf and yard waste stream.
Okay, thank you. My next question about saving approximately $2,000 a month if we went into the summer months. So just to be clear, $4,200 a month is what it would cost to include a monthly pickup through the summer months.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay, the guide, 15,000, does that include the online and paper advertising that goes out to announce the pickups as well? Is that included in that budget number?
Through the chair to Councillor Martin. So the $15,000 is just for the production of the guide and sending it out to households through Canada Post. So any other advertising for programs such as leaf and yard waste collection or delayed collection, that's in a different separate budget.
Okay. The illegal dumping waste management bylaw, how would staff go about enforcing that if there was a fine attached to illegal dumping?
Through the chair to Councillor Martin. So if they were able to identify where it came from, then I think it would have to go through like Provincial Offences Act. And then if they were seen to be guilty through there, then they would go about collecting the fine that way. But unfortunately, right now, we don't have a means to even to get to that point.
Okay, perfect. And the green bin. So, I've got so many questions. This is very helpful, all of it, and obviously at that dollar value, that's not something that Norfolk County is able to do right now, but I wonder if there's additional information or more digging that can be done as to the cost in general that we're saving when we have a green bin and then all of a sudden yard waste starts to go into it, among other things. I think it would kind of chip away at summer pickups and it would chip away at spring and fall pickups. Is it correct that you said the T. DeVos company, that is a composting facility that we could technically look at if we had a green bin program, or are they full outside of their commitments to what they take and process from us currently?
So through the chair to Councillor Martin. So T. DeVos, they take only leaf and yard waste. So under your environmental compliance approval, there's certain types of material that you're allowed to accept. I believe there's stronger regulations around green bin material because of it, the moisture content, the odor that's related to it versus leaf and yard waste. So right now, T. DeVos, I believe they're only able to accept leaf and yard waste. However, I can follow up and get a for sure answer on that.
Okay. I wonder if staff is, or mostly you, if you have conversations with places like that or other municipalities and where they're going and what they're doing for these types of options. And I wonder if this is something that Norfolk County could look at doing on a pilot program. Is there one isolated community in Norfolk County that wants to adopt the green bin program? Or do we want to roll it out where people can decide to opt in and they can pay for their own bin? Because I know right now in Port Dover, there's an overwhelming amount of the community that really want to participate in a green bin option. So could we look at something like that? And then my last comment to you would just be that I've had a couple conversations, and I know that Councillor Van Passen can build on this, but a couple conversations with some big reputable farms in Norfolk County that are currently buying compost for their crops from Hamilton. They're paying an arm and a leg in delivery charges, more than they're even paying on the compostable material, and they are definitely in the market to buy from Norfolk County. Should we be able to go down that route? My just kind of closing thought that you can provide feedback or maybe just get back to council when you have more time to put into it, but is there a 10-year plan that in your mind you can see us heading down the road for a better, more green, more environmentally friendly waste management plan here in Norfolk County, especially giving consideration to 2023. We're looking at being at capacity. You said section 2.1C, Norfolk County should try to achieve 50% waste reduction by 2025. So keeping those things in mind, if we can't afford to do it now, is there a way that we can strategize and roll out a long-term plan that we can start to pick away at? But otherwise, this was great. Thank you.
Councilor Rabbit.
Thank you, Chair Geisens. Through you to Marissa, thank you for the report. I have several questions as well. I want to start off by flipping right to the recommendation put forward by staff. It's on page 72 of our agenda. I'm referencing the third clause down in the recommendations from the top. It says, and further that council support leaving recyclables in plastic bags at the curb starting October 7th, 2019 to assist with the efficient processing of recyclables at the material recovery facility. I believe, should that say to cease picking up the plastic bags at the curbside, or are you recommending leaving that in? Because throughout the report suggests that that's increasing in processing costs by having these single-use plastic bags with recyclables in them. We're trying to encourage the use of recycling containers or those blue bins or black boxes. So should that recommendation say to stop that?
Through the chair to Councillor Rabbit. So it should say to stop collecting recyclables in plastic bags curbside.
Understood. That's what I thought as well. I just noticed that the cessation of the program was included in that recommendation, so that'll need to be altered if we're to pass it. Getting further into the recommendation, I'm noticing that we are maintaining the 4 pickups or 4 weeks of pickup, depending on how you phrase it, for the spring pickup. And that's as per council's direction during the budget sessions. We also had some direction that we wanted to maintain 6 weeks of pickup or 6 pickups in the fall. And that number hasn't changed or been altered in your recommendations?
Through the chair to Councillor Rabbit, so the 6 weeks was going to remain the same.
Very good. Our concern at that time, or my concern specifically, was with having the potential to have leaves on the road. Not only is it dangerous for pedestrians, folks on bicycles, motorcycles, but also people driving their car can actually hit that slick and end up over the curb. So we wanted to make sure that those 6 pickups were staying in, and I wanted to articulate that. Really disheartened that the organics program is costing so much as presented. I do concur with Councillor Martin that there may be some other alternatives that we need to explore to prevent those organics from getting into the normal waste stream. I would be willing to entertain possibly even an organics pickup day where if someone were to maybe purchase their own green bin, they're able to truck it to a transfer location. Maybe we would accept that. Maybe we accept it at no cost. Maybe have a $16 day for that tonnage. I think whatever we do as a council to prevent those organics going into the normal waste stream and ending up in a landfill should be encouraged. Just because we've had a report presented that it doesn't necessarily have the cost savings or the financial impact is too great to entertain an organics program doesn't mean that there isn't something else that we could do. We don't have to make that decision today. I just wanted to make sure that I was articulating that and supporting the folks in Port Dover as well as folks in Simcoe that want to organically dispose of their waste in a proper way. I had some others. I'm going to leave it for the moment while I collect my thoughts and let my other colleagues ask you some questions. Thanks, Marissa.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes, I have a couple questions, Mr. Chairman. And first one, I thought at budget time last January and February that we discussed a two-year rotation for appliance pickup. I thought we had approved that. Ms. LaPlante, do you know anything about that?
Through the chair to Councillor Columbus, I do recall a discussion regarding every 2 years, but unfortunately I just can't remember if it was approved or not at budget time. Sorry.
Yeah, the bulky item pickup program. Marissa?
I believe the wording in the resolution at the time was to look at potentially having it every 2 years, but there wasn't anything specifically indicating that it wanted to go directly to 2 years.
Okay, I see. I've got another question, but maybe you want to deal with this one, Mr. Chairman, first.
Yes, okay.
I see Councillor Michelli.
Mr. Michelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Councillor Columbus, I do believe that you are correct, and I have checked my notes about this prior to this meeting. We do have, during those same budget deliberations in February, at our February 20th budget deliberation meeting, we also at that time, and Marissa's report, and by the way, Marissa, very thorough and thoughtful report, thank you. But she indicates on page 65 that during those budget deliberations, we also determined that we were going to have the $16 days extended so that we have one in the spring, which has just passed, and one in about 2 weeks. And it was during that same discussion that we determined that we would have alternate year bulky item pickup. I may have to rely on the clerk to go back to find this for me, but it is certainly my very firm belief that that was not a consideration that we discussed, but rather a major decision that we had made. So I believe you are correct.
Okay, maybe we can get some clarification on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. She's looking it up right now.
Okay. My next question is with respect to the organics, the green bin organics. I know some communities have a central bin in place in the urban area of town where people can drive their organic green waste, 12 cobs of corn that you never used that have been in the fridge for a couple weeks, and you got to get rid of them. So you can actually drive this material there, and then someone comes and picks it up every day or every second day and dispose of it. It's something that maybe we can work on. It's not the best system, but it would handle some of those concerns that Councillor Martin and Rabbits have spoken about. Just your thoughts on that.
The clerk has the what you were what we're asking for.
Through the chair to committee, The resolution from the operating budget deliberations is as follows: that the bulky item pickup program remain in the 2019 levy-supported operating budget, and that staff work towards establishing a 2020 bulky item pickup and every 2 years thereafter, and further that an additional bulky item drop-off week be offered in the spring at a discounted rate of $16.
Was that difference? Councilor Van Passen, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some questions or comments about the organics program, but I don't think the math is quite correct on it. They're estimating 4,000 tons and a cost of $1.8 million a year, but if there's 4,000 tons now going into a green box program, there's not 4,000 tons going into the garbage program, and at $200 a ton, that's a savings there out of the garbage budget of about $800,000. So that more or less cuts, that estimated cost down considerably. There's $600,000 in startup costs in there. I don't believe I'm saying this, but I think we should proceed a little bit farther down the line and actually check. We need a facility that can compost that kind of material, and then the concept of a pilot project, and pick one area and try to do a pilot there and see whether there is uptake from it. But the bigger thing is to find a place that composts the material, and whether we get some local businessman that's going to have the idea of taking that challenge on, and there is a market for that composted material, again, that will be offsetting the budget, or potentially could be offsetting the budget. But I think it's as a one-time first shot at it, it's a great report, but I think it's probably worth a little bit more investigation to go down that road, especially the direction that the country and the world is going, and we need a solution not for today, we need it down the road as well. So why not look into a pilot project or something to that effect?
Councilor Taylor and then Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Chair Geisens. I had very similar...
Chop, sorry. Go ahead.
Nope. Thank you, Chair. I had very similar notes jotted down as Councilor Van Passen. Also that saying 4,000 tons is about 25% of that garbage collection, and I'm just thinking about my personal garbage. I think it's a fair bit more than 25% organic, just based off what we're throwing out. So I think there's room for a lot more savings here than we're giving credit to. So again, I think a pilot project would be phenomenal.
Okay. Mayor Chop?
Thank you, sir. I just kind of wanted to jump in, actually, with not to beat a dead horse on the green bin piece as well. But when we look at the garbage budget, so it's nearly a $7 million budget, and last year we were $200,000 over. I think that we really need to do some deep digging. I mean, that's almost the same size of budget as our public health budget. And so, we've got to start looking at ways here, just like our public health meeting earlier, where, no longer are we looking at smoking cessation programs and so on. We're looking at food affordability and different challenges that we face. And the organics piece, like Councillor Van Passen rightly pointed out, we're not factoring in those calculations, all the money that we're saving by not diverting that to a landfill. I also think that when we look at that calculation, do we need an organics collection program in the rural areas? Probably not. Most people have a compost bin in the rural areas. We're looking at an organic collection program in town. I also would agree that most people would probably go and pay for their bin to participate on it, so it didn't affect all the taxpayers that weren't taking advantage of that program. So that's my 2 cents on that piece. In terms of the fines, if we do go down, I'm kind of surprised we don't already have a bylaw for this. In fact, I just was speaking with Mr. Davos on the weekend, and he was telling me in the yard and leaf waste pickup how they have all kinds of things, that toilets and everything else that are in the leaf and yard waste bags that are shoved in there. So I think that if we do go down the road, and hopefully we do, number one, if we're going to create a new bylaw, we need to ensure that it is actually enforced. Number two, I think the idea that we're actually going to go and pursue somebody through the courts, like almost all of our bylaws, that's, in reality, that's not going to happen. But there is a provision within the Municipal Act, under Section 425, that allows a municipality to directly create a fine. In fact, it can be a recurring fine if the infraction has not been remedied. So I think that's the biggest thing, is we need to, if we're going to do this, we need to create a bylaw that is easily enforced, and one that's a fine, and that if the fine is not paid, because we know we have 6 million in outstanding POA fines, what's the point of doing it if we're not going to collect it? We need to find a way, if Shelley was here still, to be able to put that directly onto people's tax bills or so on and so forth. And if it's a tenant, it goes on to the owners and they can do their, I don't know exactly the logistics of that, but we need to find a way to make that easily enforceable. And then I think with the guide, we really need to maybe change it as a March to a March calendar or something, because we can't go through what we just went through this year, where we made changes and we were bombarded with angry emails and phone calls. The amount of time that we spent on that is not worth us putting the guide out on time if, it's possible for council to make changes. I'm also a little bit surprised at kind of the price tag that goes along with that. And so I'm wondering things like the Christmas tree flyer, what does that end up costing us at the end of the day? And is that something maybe we could simply, put online on the Norfolk County website? And again, it all comes into this idea, it's a changing world and paper is not the norm anymore. And when we're looking at trying to find some efficiencies in a $7 million budget, we just have to start digging around. So I know you might not know that number off the top of your head, but maybe some of those flyers, the calendar may still be a good idea, provided it's issued after budget and after we've decided on a plan. But maybe for some of the others, we look at changing. The only other one that, well, not the only other one, but one other thing that I wanted to point out was there was a quote about the e-recycling, and I believed it was something like 34,000 in revenue that we're bringing in from the e-recycling?
So the $34,000 that is in the household hazardous waste, that's money collected for the eco fees, but it's not specifically on electronics. It would be more so on paint and motor oil and things like that.
But then that must be offset with a cost to us as well, right?
Sorry, I'm not quite following.
So that revenue we're bringing in, but then what is it cost? Like, what's the cost on that?
So the actual cost for the hazardous waste programs overall was $67,100. And then that's also recognizing that $34,000 savings that we get back from the collection of those materials.
Okay.
I'll find the exact, do you have the page?
64 second paragraph.
So if you look at table 4, at the bottom it has stewardship reimbursement. So there's a breakdown of each event, how much it costs, and then an overall reimbursement. I don't have an exact figure as to how much we would get back each event. However, that number will also fluctuate because it depends on the type of material that we get in each year, and that can vary widely as well.
But the point is, so there's still a cost in Norfolk County of doing this. So it's another
Absolutely.
area. Is there some way of doing it differently? There's also a lot of private companies, right, that do some of this type of, so yes, we are bringing in a revenue through the stewardship program, but clearly it's actually costing us more than we're bringing in through the stewardship cost program. So maybe there's some way there that we could look at least making that revenue neutral, or encouraging people to perhaps donate through some of these other programs that, take on materials like that.
So this program, the hazardous waste program, is also undergoing the transition to producer responsibility. So come 2021, we shouldn't be bearing the costs for running these event days.
And one final question is, in terms of all of the polyethylene that we collect off of our farmers' fields, can you just tell me a little bit about that and where it goes and how that impacts our tonnage in Norfolk County? Because there's a lot of it, I think.
Through the chair to Mayor Chop, are you referring to like the black plastic that's used in the fields right now?
black, sometimes white, a lot of white.
Unfortunately, it's going to landfill.
And into our landfill.
Oh, it'd be going, so it'll be brought in through the transfer station. So Norfolk County currently doesn't have an operating landfill.
Okay.
So the material that's brought into the transfer station does go to landfill. It goes to Walker Environmental's landfill out Niagara Way.
So that is being handled at the same price as all other material, at the same tonnage rate, I'm assuming?
Yes, they're charged at the $122 per ton.
So I would be curious in what some other regions are doing with some of this material. I mean, on the one hand, it's fantastic for our farmers. On another hand, I mean, it is extraordinary when you drive through what is actually going on here in Norfolk County. And there are some new technologies out there of converting, plastics to oil and so on and so forth. And that's the number one material that's being used, or the most ideal material to do that. So I'm wondering if that's not an area that maybe it's not even necessarily going to save us money, but I think that it's something that from an environmental stewardship that we need to take a serious look at in Norfolk County.
Councilor Columbus.
The mayor's correct. There is tons and tons of this plastic culture that's going on, and it is going to waste dump sites. The Norfolk, or the Federation of Agriculture, I know, they looked into it, and they had some experiments going with it to recycle it into usable product like fence posts and that type of thing. And they found out that it had too much soil in it. I think it has to be down less than 8% soil before it can be recycled, and that was an issue. But there are plastics now that dissolve with the sunlight, and there's other plastics that dissolve with the moisture in the ground. So there is research being conducted on that.
Okay. Amy?
Sorry, I'll pass the torch over here to Councillor Rabbits. I have a motion when discussion's finished.
Okay. Councillor Rabbit?
Thank you, Chair Geisens. The final comment that I wanted to make was with regards to the calendar. I don't want to beat a dead horse. It was the number one complaint that I did receive this year for us changing the schedule after it had been printed, and I do want to offer the public our apologies for that. We went to a budget session looking to save some dollars, restructure some things, and we ended up inadvertently changing something that had already been established in print. So I'm hoping that we won't go through that exercise again. Also appreciating, folks were putting out their bags early. They were getting soggy. Many of these individuals likely would have taken those to the transfer station on their own accord, but they had trouble picking up the bags without them falling apart. Then they had to buy some more brown bags. We want to avoid that repeating itself this season. I would like to get out the calendar in the same time frame, but I'm also amenable to us possibly postponing that, knowing that our garbage collection days will not be changing. There could potentially be some changes in here that we make in January, and I'd hate to just repeat the same event, that if we go into a budget decision, maybe we make a decision on green bins, maybe we don't. But that could we could be driving towards the same outcome where we've made a change to the calendar that does affect people, and it's already been printed. So if at all possible, I would like to not print that calendar until we know what we're doing, so we can clearly communicate to the public when those pickup days are, what can they expect. It is sacrosanct, it goes on the kitchen fridge, and we messed with a good thing last year in terms of that communication piece. We couldn't reprint them. I'm wondering if you have a response for that to provide to us, what you think or some of my comments are, because again, I don't want to repeat this process. It was a number one call that I received, and I simply didn't have an answer other than we changed things after the fact, after the print had gone out. I promised my constituents we wouldn't repeat that this year.
Through the chair to Councillor Rabbits. So there's the potential that we could look at doing, say, an April to April calendar, and then that would give a bit of time for budget deliberations, and then as well as allowing us to meet our sign-off. There's possibility that this year we could look at putting it out January to April 2021, and then so then people still have it. The one thing I heard with some that didn't receive it because there was a miscommunication with Canada Post, that it's a piece that they really look forward to and that they find very helpful. So I'm just a little bit hesitant on delaying it too much. However, I do recognize that we do want to provide the most correct information so that residents can participate to the programs to their best ability.
The challenge is while they may enjoy receiving it, the hours of emails and phone calls and our time is when it could be more focused, other things, is just not worth it. The cost, I mean, it's $12,000 to print, but when you add up the time cost that we each, lost over that period of time, for myself, I can't justify that either. It's too much. I mean, somehow it has to be delayed, and if they don't have it for a couple months, well, it'll be a Christmas present in the spring.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we can take that back. We'll have some discussion with staff before the report comes back to council. My recommendation might be that we draft what the messaging, some of the key messaging would be for the publication so that council approves the messaging going out. So if there's changes in the collection or the schedule or some other service that might be provided for 2020, that we get that clear direction in the schedule before it goes to print, and that we may be able to achieve that maybe with a slightly later date, but not delayed too far, if that might be amenable to council.
I have Councillor Pass. I believe you wanted to be the last one, Councillor Passon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also want to make the suggestion that you might want to speak with the fire chief before you start leaf and yard waste pickups in the summertime for grass clippings, because one of the cool things about chemistry is you put wet grass clippings in a paper bag and pack it down real tight. In about 3 days, spontaneous combustion takes place, and you can start really cool fires that way. So I think you might want to check on how you're going to go about doing that to make sure people don't put wet clippings into paper bags and lean them against their garages, because otherwise our fire department might get busy.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 final points. Mayor Chop's comments about initiating a fine and adding that to someone's tax bill. I would just like to inform council and remind Marissa that actually a grade 5 student reached out to this council. He lives in Councillor Columbus's ward, and Marissa and I attended his school, and he was a recycling savant for his age. And Marissa put together an amazing presentation. She went and informed 2 of the classes about recycling and what that looks like in Norfolk County, and this grade 5 student said, "Can't we just fine people $1 when they don't recycle properly?" And Norfolk County couldn't figure out how to drill down on that, but I think Mayor Chop might have, so she's onto something here. And thank you to Brady for the suggestion. The Xmas tree pickups, the Christmas tree pickups. Not only do we look at putting that online on our website, but then I think we need to connect with our communications department and follow up with a specific post to put on social media, and then that gets shared a lot quicker than it would just sitting online, and I think that should help reduce some of our costs. One question I have regarding the plastic, in the motion, the recommendation for the October 7th leaving of the recyclables on the road. Do you have any comments you can provide council with maybe initiating that change starting January 1st or even February 1st after the holidays? I say that because there's been a lot of pushback in the community since the article came out about the plastic pickups, and people weren't really understanding, I guess, that shouldn't be happening. So do you have any comments on stretching that a little bit farther than October, just to give the public more notice, get in the habit of not doing that before we start leaving them all over the road?
Through the chair to Councillor Martin, we definitely can be flexible on that date. It was just something that was really being identified and pushed by the recycling processor that is becoming extremely problematic, more so in the fact that the bagged recycling was coming in more contaminated than if it were loose in the recycling box. So we were finding that people were putting food waste in those bags. So with the summer, it ended up having maggots and flies and things like that. So we can be a bit flexible, but ultimately we'd like to look at going down that road to help with the issue that we're currently facing.
Okay, that being said, I would like to move the majority of this recommendation. I'd like to add a couple things to the deputy clerk. The first two bullets are fine. The third bullet that reads starting October 7th, I can put this out to my colleagues, but I'd like to suggest December 1st or February 1st, something that kind of avoids the holidays, where we can give the public a little bit more notice that we won't be picking up these plastic bags, and actually will be leaving them on their curbs. The fourth bullet and fifth bullet I'm okay with, if we want to include some messaging about consulting our fire department on the summer pickups. The bullet that reads, and further that council not initiate an organics program at this time, I would like to strike in its entirety. And further that staff be directed to bring a report to council with potential fines, I would like to leave that. And I would like to attach, and further that council directs staff to further investigate compost facilities and organic green bin programs, and further provide details on offsetting costs of organic tonnage, and further investigate implementation and various pickup arrangements for the initiation of a pilot or full green bin program in a report.
Councilor Roberts and Councilor Michele next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Geisens, and through you to Councillor Martin, I'd like to propose a friendly amendment to the second clause on page 72. I would like to refer to furniture and appliance program as bulky item pickup. That's how I've been referring to it, and that's, as I understand, the majority of our citizens refer to it as bulky item pickup. That includes more than just simple furniture and appliances. They're heavy items. And I want to affirm Council's earlier decision to have it occurring biannually, or every 2 years, commencing in 2020.
Lovely. Sure.
And I'd also like to second that motion. Thanks for the amendment, Amy. Sounds good.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry. Councilor Van Passen. Sorry, I have Mr. Michele and then Van Passen, sorry.
Could I ask a question of the clerk first?
Go ahead.
Is it possible to split these two, like Councilor Martin's sort of addition on the organics program? This is sort of, the rest of it deals with what exists, and that one's sort of something separate. Could we split those as two separate motions?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Passen, of course you can. If the two motions can stand apart and stand alone, fine, then you can divide them.
I would be willing to do that myself.
Councilor Michele?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My suggestion was an amendment to Councillor Martin's motion, and Councillor Roberts articulated it exactly as I would have said, so it's moot now. Thank you.
So where are we now? That's the question. Want to bring it forward again one more time? No?
Through the chair, and please correct me to the mover and seconder if I have missed anything, that staff report PW 1954 waste management review be received as information, and that the furniture and appliance program bracket bulky item pickup bracket remain every 2 years to minimize cost to residents commencing in 2020, and further that council stop collecting recyclables in plastic bags at the curb starting December 1st, 2019 to assist with the efficient processing of recyclables at the material recovery facility, and further that council approve one pickup per month for June, July, August, and September for the curbside collection of leaf and yard waste for the approved urban areas as outlined in the report above, and further that council approve the spring curbside collection of leaf and yard waste every other week, so 4 collections over an 8-week period beginning the second week of April for the approved urban areas for the spring leaf and yard waste program. And further that staff be directed to bring a report to council with potential fines for illegal dumping under the Waste Management Bylaw 2013-164. That would be the first motion.
Okay, who's going to put it forward? Sorry. Yeah, we got it, Martin and Rabbit. We have mover and seconder. All those in favor? That is carried. Now for the second half.
Through the chair, if the mover and seconder are the same as the first, since we've now divided it, and I would have to wordsmith it a little bit, I can certainly do that and bring it back, but the premise of the motion would be that staff be directed to further investigate compost facilities and organic green bin programs, as well as details on offsetting costs and organic tonnage, and investigate pickup arrangements and/or pilot green bin program and report back to council.
Questions? Someone to move, or Councillor Mayor Martin, and seconder, Michele? Any questions? If not, all those in favor? That is carried. Moving on. Okay, well, we have, you'll do it after? Okay. Are we done now? Okay. We're going to take a break, and I guess we'll be back after our deputations to finish off the rest.
on a strip of sandy soil.